You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and this is 6 Degrees of John Keel.
Hello and welcome to the 6 Degrees of John Keel podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Barbara Fisher. Tonight I'm talking with Octavian Graves, the host of Strange Dominions podcast. He had a question for me, and I was like, there's probably other people who have this question, so let's just make an episode out of it. So here you go. Ask away, sir.
Okay, so my question was pretty basic. How we've all heard about the dangers and perils of interacting with the Fae and working with the Fae, but there are people who do work with them effectively and safely. What are some effective ways and safe ways of interacting with the Fae and gaining direct communion with the Fae?
Okay, this is a multi-part answer. And the first thing I'm going to answer that question with is another question, because I have questions. But why do you wish to contact the Fae? What is your purpose? Always have that in mind.
My purpose is to have basically direct communion with a spiritual entity of any kind. Because, in my quest for, doing ceremonial magic, I'm nowhere closer to doing that now than I was a year ago. It's expensive. I have no place to do it. And it's just a massive hassle. It is a goal of mine that I hope to someday accomplish, but it is not any time in the future that that's going to happen. I do a lot of offerings and meditations and things like that, everything that what the books tell you to do, and in time,
right,
you will gain some kind of communion with something. And I have been doing this for a year, and it feels like I'm being ignored. And I've heard that the Fae, as dangerous as they are very accessible. They're like right here. They're very close to us, and they're easier to communicate with than many other forms of spirits. So that was why, and honestly, like within my cosmology, Fae and nature spirits are something more that I would want to work with on a regular basis than the goetic spirits and things like that. Like I have nothing against those, and I do want to work with those at some point, but just within my worldview, those kind of spirits are what I identify with or would like to work with the most.
All right, that's fair. One thing I'm going to say that might sound a little bit weird is goetic spirits are probably safer, honestly. Okay. Because they have specific rules and they have very specific rituals.
Yes, they do.
That you follow, and they can be compelled by these rituals by a powerful enough practitioner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You cannot compel a fairy. Don't even try. That's like, so my that's the first part. And the second part of my answer is this: there's no real safe way to deal with the Fae, but there are safer ways than others. There's a lot of really crap folklore out about the Fae. And it's funny. We've been, scheduled for this for a week or so, 2 weeks. And I woke up this morning from a dream about being underground and there's water and there's drumming and there's singing, and then I hear a voice say, "You're home. This is your home. You can come back whenever you want." And then I see on Facebook, Kat Heath had written about how good it was for her to go home to where she was born, and even it was a small journey, small span of time. It was, just a quick holiday visit. It really got her back in touch with her roots. And I was like, okay, there's a synchronicity. It's a boom. And then later in the day, like an hour later, not even like a couple hours, an hour later, Morgan Daimler and Kat, and a bunch of people that follow Morgan, mostly pagans, neo-pagans, witches, some scholars, were talking about how people conceive of the Fae as a safe kind of spirit to engage with. And I was like, this is just interesting that all of this is happening today. And you listened to Kat's episode.
Yes, I did.
And so Kat is hanging over us. I think she is. So what I basically would suggest is that there are spirits that are safer. I know people talk about the goetic spirits as they're demons, but they're not spooky demons in the way that we think of demons. I mean, they're
the way that I've been describing it since I really started researching it and learning about it, and the way I talk about it on the show is that instead of using the word demon, a chthonic spirit is a much more apt term.
Right.
They are not this. They're a lot more morally ambiguous than people want to believe. And when you put demon on their title, then that immediately denotes a moral connotation that they don't actually have. Mm-hmm. So that's why chthonic spirit or sublunar spirit is a much more accurate term for them.
I think that's correct. I think the use of demon probably adds an energy to them that isn't native to them. So that's one thing. But truly, I do think that they are safer because they can be bound by humans. They can be bound by human words and deeds. Can't do it with the Fae, can't do it with the elves. They just have none of that. Not gonna not play in that game. But there are people who work with the elves, which is the Germanic term.
Yeah.
In the Old Norse term for what the Irish would call the Sidhe or the fairies. And they are really similar to each other. Similar enough that you could say they're the same. I wouldn't say that they're the same, but they're similar. And they do have a separate existence from humans. They have their own businesses they get into, their own things they do. The ones that, you want to converse with, you have to also remember that nature spirits and fairies are not necessarily the same thing.
No, I understood that.
So the nature spirits, the whole idea that fairies are these little diminutive little devas that hang out with the flowers and make them grow and all that business came about because of theosophy, which is another topic we got onto today. So that's a whole other thing. So let's look at the ones that we call the Sidhe or the elves. The elves really are what Tolkien based his elves on, although he doesn't really, I mean, they're otherworldly and all of that, but they don't seem too terribly scary. Certainly not in the movies until, the king of the wood elves, shows up and is, Yeah, he's pretty scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
He got that right. That they did that right. And well, Galadriel is a little scary with her kind of. My mind is floating off everywhere while I'm still talking to you, and I'm looking through your soul.
Yeah, that one scene
ruffling
always
around.
messed with me as a kid. He actually
Yeah.
gets angry.
Yeah. So it is portrayed that way, but I really think that there is so much opposite imagery in popular culture that people will get this kind of odd, oh well, I can hang out with the fairies, and it's like, oh no, please don't do that. Don't do that. If you see a beautiful white horse come prancing out of the forest, please don't just go and get on it. That's gonna end very badly. So it helps to know the kinds of books you can look at and get a more accurate portrayal. So the old books that I would say you should at least look into, if not read all the way, is Robert Kirk's The Secret Commonwealth. Yeah. That was written in the 17th century.
I've been trying to find an affordable copy of that because him and the woman, I don't remember her name, but she's a very famous folklorist who wrote many, many books on the Fae.
Catherine Briggs.
Yes. Incredibly
They're
expensive.
both expensive. Yeah. Yes. They are both hideously expensive. Sometimes you can get a good deal at a used bookstore, or even at a, just start scouring library cast-off sales and stuff. Because those two you can find in places like libraries.
What I started with, like what really kind of started brewing this in my mind, was both God, I cannot remember exactly how you pronounce his name. Kendallson or Kvendelson, Earth Wights and Elves and Trolls. I got a reprint of that book, and I got a bunch of books from Robin Artisan, and I'm actually taking his class that he's doing. And he, and Carowin is all about the fairy faith. And so that's what really started getting me on this track of, like, summoning goetic demons or goetic spirits is not an easy task, and it's not one that I'm any closer to doing. But this stuff seems a little bit more accessible, a little cheaper, a little more rural.
Certainly cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, those damn goetic guys, I gotta have all the
the walls and
frou, fra. Yeah, all that crap. That's no fun. The cunning men and women of old had none of that nonsense. They didn't have time or energy for it, and they certainly didn't have money for it.
Yeah.
So I would suggest the books of Catherine Briggs, so the Encyclopedia of Fairies, Robert Kirk. I mean, you can take them out of a library and read them. Yeah. And get the feel of it. Or you can take them out of the library and then go, that thing that we can do. Yeah. I'm not saying you should. Yeah. The copy, send it to your monks to have it copied.
Absolutely.
Actually, my first copy of The Secret Commonwealth was sent to the monks to copy.
That's a book that I feel like I guarantee, I feel like my grandmother has a copy of it.
Well, there you go.
She has like 3,000 books. I have a feeling that she has a copy of something to that degree, at least.
Yeah. And then there's what is it? The Evans Wentz book, The Fairy Faith. Yeah. That one is quite good. Again, these are, I like the Kirk book because he's really very, very straightforward. And he was a practitioner himself.
Okay. So I didn't
as
know
well
that.
as being a minister.
Okay.
So he did the work of essentially being a cunning man. So he knew the ways. You just have to get around that whole 17th century
Right. Yeah.
dialect. But there are some decent translations of it. And 17th century isn't like, reading 15th or 16th century
I
English,
have read
which
so
is,
many grimoires, and I've become so accustomed to that
you
language.
should be okay. Yeah. Occasionally he'll lapse into Scottish Gaelic or Scottish dialect, and you'll be like, "What the heck?" But you can usually, look it up and get it. We have the internet now, and it helps.
I have my DNA test from Ancestry coming in hopefully soon, and the reason I did that, like, I know the majority of my ancestry is Jewish, so it's going to come from the Slavic countries, but I have another part that's on my grandmother's side that's Manx, and I wanted to see how much was Manx, and then dig into the folklore and the Manx specific practices. Because that really calls to me in a big way.
Cool. All right. So you're on a good path with Robin. You're in good hands. Very, very good hands. I've communicated with him back and forth. He doesn't know my name because I was using a pseudonym at the time. So
have you thought about having him on the show?
Yeah, I've probably this year.
Okay.
I figure. Yeah. Because he's a good guy. He knows his things. So a little bit more accessible of a book in price and availability is Morgan Daimler's A New Dictionary of Fairy.
Okay. I think that's in my Amazon wish list. I'm not sure, but I think it is. One of her books is.
It's a good one. It's a good one. And it's very similar to the Briggs book, more up to date, with more of the stuff that modern people are gonna maybe run across. So it's a really good resource. Now the 3 books from 3 authors I would suggest for learning safer ways to deal with the Fae is Kat Heath's Elves, Witches, and Gods.
Just showed up in my mailbox.
Yep. It's a great book. Fairy, A Guide to the Lore, Magic, and World of the Good Folk by John T. Cruz. That's with a K.
Okay.
And it's Cruz with no I. Everything else is Cruz.
Okay.
And then Morgan Daimler's Fairycraft, Following the Path of Fairy Witchcraft.
Okay.
And, they really give you the easiest way to learn the quick and dirty methods of dealing with the Fae. Do you have any inkling of having ever had any sort of contact in the physical realm or spirit realm with the Fae at all?
This is the problem, right? When I really got into the actual practice of this, because I've been a researcher my entire life, but it wasn't until 2020 when I really started sitting down and trying to figure out how I was actually going to do this. I kept looking for ways of contact. And the first thing I found was a ceremonial system because it's very direct contact. And then I find Jason Miller had put out this book, Consorting with Spirits. And it gives you a little ritual for making offerings to nature spirits and anything in the woods. And it includes in the invocation your deity that you work with. So for me, that'd be Hecate and your ancestors, things like that. And so I started going out once a week, every week, with a bagel, incense, and rum or whiskey, setting it down in a tree, saying the invocation and saying, listen, I would really like to contact you. So if you would like, you can contact me here. You can contact me in dream. I gave them 4 or 5 different methods if they wanted to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this for months.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I was getting real frustrated. So I stopped for a while. I would do it every once in a while. But nothing, no discernible contact that I could think of. I've had weird dreams, but they weren't, I didn't feel that there was any kind of information being passed along. Because I would ask, like, listen, like, I would like to know what you want. What would you like? And I never felt like I was getting that. There was one time back in like September where I read out the invocation from Jason Miller along with the Orphic hymn for nymphs. And I felt like it got really windy when there wasn't a lot of wind. I felt like the trees were blowing and things like that. But again, there wasn't nothing followed me home, nothing. And a lot of people were thinking like, well, that's good. I'm like, I know it is, but at the same time, I'm so hungry for that contact that I'm almost willing to have a little bit of danger just because like that would really put a lot of what I've been learning to the test, honestly.
Okay. So have you ever talked to Timothy Renner, not the dude in the hospital, Jeremy Renner, but
yeah, I mean, I talked to Tim
but
probably once a
the
week.
Bigfoot wizard. Have you spoken with him about this sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And
did he say anything about wanting too hard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I figured that was what he said.
Yeah. But see, and that too, like I understand the lust for a result thing, but how do you pretend not to want something? That's the thing that always confuses me is how do you pretend to not want something? I don't know how to put this out of my head.
I think, see, do you sing? Play music?
I play guitar.
You're a guitarist, aren't you?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried going out and just playing music? Just don't ask nothing. Don't just play music.
No. I've contemplated it, but I've never done it.
Well, stop contemplating and actually do it.
Okay.
Because here you go. Here's the thing. One, they like musicians. Two, they have this perverse nature where the more you want them and you chase after them, the more likely they are to just sort of dance right outside of your reach.
Okay.
So, and you asked what they wanted. And that's a very open question. You know, they could give any number of answers, but their favorite one is to say nothing, which is a very open answer because it could be nothing or everything. You always have to be ready for that. I'm not saying they're liars. They actually do speak the truth very, very frequently, but it's worded very cleverly. So you have to be on your toes. But they do favor musicians.
Okay.
So go outside. Winter's probably kind of a crappy time to do it, but it's warm enough this winter.
Been like 60 degrees in Maryland.
Yeah. So yeah, same here. So go outside, find a place in the woods to sit. Don't cast a circle. Don't make an offering because your music is the offering.
Okay.
And play something that you like yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Do not go, what would they like, and then play it.
I'm not going to play any Irish jigs.
Play the music that makes you happy, the music that feels like it comes from your heart, and keep doing that. Don't just do it once and then wander off. Keep doing that. You are going to be more likely to draw them in with music than you are with chasing after them. Did you ever have the offerings do anything weird after you left them? Did you go back and check on them? Did you find anything up a tree or?
The one place that I was doing it for a while, it felt dead. Like it just like it didn't feel like anything. So I went to another place that was more secluded, and I did like 2 or 3 offerings there. And then the most recent time when I came back, it's kind of hard to explain. Next to the tree, there's like almost like a cave underneath the ground, and there's basically like the dirt creates a Y next to the tree, and there's a space. I'm assuming a person did this. I can't imagine a person didn't do this, but there's just now a ladder made out of twigs next to where I do my offerings.
And you said nothing happened.
I'm not sure how to take it though. What does that mean? This is where the direct contact would come in handy, because then I could understand what it is that they're trying to say with that, if that is them.
A Y shows a fork in the road.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 2 paths you can go by. The great wisdom of Jimmy Page, will help you. You're a guitarist. You know that song.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, yeah, you have to. It's contractually obligated as a guitarist. Yeah. But that is one of the things it can denote. It could also denote yes.
Mm-hmm.
A ladder is interesting.
It looks
ladders
like a thatched roof. If you were underneath the tree, then it would look like, if you looked up, it would look like a thatched roof.
Mm-hmm.
And it was never there before.
Okay. So I think you should go there and play music.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe a kid made it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But, it could have also been made by people hands that were not human people hands, because that's the thing about the Fae. They are people,
Mm-hmm.
like we are, except they are not corporeal all the time.
Right.
And they can go back and forth. But, one of the places they're said to live is under the ground. And you've got a hole and a ladder. The Y could be a welcome mat.
When I say, I'd have to take a picture of it and to really accurately describe it to you. But the tree is like, it's not rotted out, but like, it's impossible to describe. It's very difficult because it's not like anything I've seen before. Basically, the tree is on a ledge, and the ledge is caving in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just there, and there's spaces in between these kind of like outgrowths of land. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so there is now a bridge over 2 pieces of land next to where I do my offerings.
Okay, so it's a bridge between 2 pieces of land.
Mm-hmm. And I realized the liminality of all of this.
Think about that. What are the 2 pieces of land representing then?
I suppose me and them.
Your land and their land.
Mm-hmm. So
so there's a bridge. They're not saying no.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe, as Tim says, try not to want it so hard.
Mm.
They're perverse little. They just are. They're very perverse, and some of them aren't little, but they do like to play with people.
Yeah.
And people's emotions. What do you give as offerings? So it's bagel and whiskey or rum.
Bagel, not Southern Comfort. Oh God, why am I forgetting the whiskey? It's the same whiskey every single time. Anyway, it's like a mid-grade whiskey. It's not too expensive, but it's certainly not too cheap. And frankincense, resin, incense.
Okay. Yeah, see, all of that is acceptable. One of their favorite food offerings for the Fae themselves is milk, cream, butter.
I was thinking about leaving out some cream, but the thing is, like, the Fae aren't even it's not until recently that I had them as a specific target. It was more of whatever's in the woods that wants to work with me, this is for you.
Right.
It wasn't until a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago, when I really started getting like really frustrated. I'm like, okay, well, who is most likely to want to work with me? Who's most likely to answer?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you did get an answer, and it wasn't as forthright as you wanted it to be, but I think you actually saw it was an answer. You just either
I have a lot of self-doubt, and I think
okay.
the problem with that is, and this is one thing that I really regret, is because I didn't get into this as a teenager. I don't have that. I have too much of like an adult logical side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm trying really hard to push that back a little bit where it needs to be pushed back, but it is difficult.
Right. Yeah, it is. Let's see. No, I think you're going in a decent direction. Now, what of the rules of the good folk do you know?
Don't say thank you.
Do you know how to express that without
clothes.
saying it? Yeah, don't give clothes. That's always a
Yeah, but no, I've always wondered that. How do you express?
Okay. All right. So the thank you thing is a thing that puzzles people, and Morgan doesn't have the answer about it. But she has a answer, and it's a pretty good answer. And I think it's probably close to what it is. She says, speaking of things to avoid, as strange as this sounds to most people, you should try never to say thank you to any being of fairy, although you must always remember to show proper gratitude. Again, they like things and dislike things at the same time, kind of. There are several ideas behind why you shouldn't say thank you, and I suspect there's no one correct answer. Rather, I think that different otherworldly beings may have a problem with it for different reasons. One theory is that saying thank you is dismissive, and it implies that you feel superior to the spirit. Which, with fairies, you should just not even do that. That's a bad idea. Another says that saying thank you acknowledges a debt between you and the fairy, and it's never wise to be in debt to the fae, especially when the debt is an open-ended one. Remember that open-ended thing we just had a little talk? Yeah, you always have to be careful how you word things. And if you're, have any question about how to word things, sit and write it down a few times and look at it. You kind of have to be a rules lawyer with this. You know. Like that annoying guy who plays D&D with you and has everything memorized and you just want to smack him. Yeah, that guy. Let's see. Whether saying thank you offends them because it is dismissive or it is dangerous because it puts you in their debt, you should not try to do it. Instead, pay back any help, blessings, or gifts with gifts. I carry around a small pouch full of little items for this purpose. You can also offer any food or drink you have with you as a thank you gift. Fairies abhor people who are greedy or stingy, so it is important to show proper gratitude to them. Instead of saying thank you, you may choose to say, I appreciate your gift or your time or whatever, or I am grateful for, to express the same sentiment. I always say I'm grateful.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
I've taught both of my kids to do that. That's just, it's sort of ingrained into us at this point. And I just thought, they don't like it when humans are greedy. They may see that desire to see them and feel them and communicate with them as a sort of greed.
Yeah, and I thought about this.
And they might run away from that laughing, probably, because it's always a fun thing to pull a human's tail.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great thing. That's why I said play music that you really like, that you really love. Don't worry about your audience.
Yeah.
Your audience isn't there. Sort of sit there, become one with the ground and the tree, and just play your feelings.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely do that. And, you know, as I've been doing research, I was thinking like, maybe I should be like leaving beer out for the brownies. Maybe that'll be an interesting thing. And I could always use help around the house. But then I was thinking like, okay, well, I have 6 cats. I can't just leave
Yeah, don't do that.
beer out. But then I was like, okay, well,
No.
I have 6 cats. Does that interfere? Like, we know what cats represent to spirits and the interaction that they have. And I'm thinking, okay, is that a deterrent? And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Barbara has cats. There's no way.
No. I had a cat in the Falling Down the Hill house back in the 90s who used to chase invisible things all the time. We thought she was crazy. Until one night I got up and the house was full of little lights floating through the air, and she was interacting with them and chasing them around and batting at them, and they were just bouncing out of her way. They were playing. She'd been playing with them all along. And they liked her. Now, my older cat, my actual familiar, she didn't like them at all. And she'd grump at them, but I don't think they cared. But if she was in the room, they wouldn't go into that room. See, she kind of kept a boundary.
Okay.
But generally, cats aren't going to stop them
Okay. That's
from
good.
much of anything. They do tend to have a little bit of an issue with dogs sometimes, but not always.
Okay. Well, I don't have any dogs.
Again, yeah. I mean, there's a story from. Do you know who Stuart Farrar was?
I know the name.
Janet and Stuart Farrar. They were very prominent early witches in the 1960s in England, and they're authors. And they eventually moved to Ireland, and then Stuart was a good bit older than Janet, and he died, and she's still in Ireland and doing, her work. And she said when they first moved there, they had friends who had a small dog who was blind, and then they had 2 other dogs that weren't blind. They had this friend had another friend stay in the house, watch the dogs while the original friends were gone. And Janet said that they were walking the dogs out in the woods, and the 3 dogs were, the 2 always stayed with the one that couldn't see to, kind of guide that dog along. And it was a small dog. I think it was like a Italian greyhound or something. It was one of the little dogs. And the woman said she felt something looking at her, and she looked up, and there was a woman stepping out of the woods wearing green. What else is she going to be wearing? And she had black hair. And the woman said that she felt this strong feeling of uncanniness. She was like, I couldn't say what it was about her that didn't look quite right, but there was something that didn't look quite right.
Okay.
She wasn't close enough to get the detail, but she could still feel there was something odd about it. But the dogs got excited and started yipping and bouncing and ran straight for the woman at the woods, including the little dog. And the little dog was running behind the big dogs. I mean, he had been left, but he followed along like a shot and went straight to her and was bouncing around on his hind legs and putting his paws on her knee. And the woman who witnessed this said that the woman bent down and smiled and said something to the dogs. And the two bigger ones stopped jumping, and she reached down and she put two fingers on the little dog's forehead. And then said something. She couldn't understand what she said, but she said like one syllable. And the three dogs all ran back to the person who had been walking them. And then she saw the dogs, and so she was like, leaning down, and then she looked up and the woman was gone. Well, the little dog could see.
Okay.
And yeah, that is one of the most amazing stories I've heard of them, although a very similar story is told by Ray Hernandez, who is, doing stuff with UFO research. And he had a little dog that was about to die, and then it was healed at some point by this bar of this column of light.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's not like they hate dogs. They like them just fine. No, animals aren't going to keep them away.
Well,
They might steal your animals. That's the other.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very bad for that. Basically, you just have to not offend them.
Mm-hmm.
So the gratitude.
I wouldn't even, and then that goes the same for like goetic spirits. I don't want to offend a chthonic spirit at all.
Yeah, but you know the ways you can offend them easily.
Mm.
With the Fae, they can be
They're more
touchy, and
ambiguous,
so yeah, that's why it's kind of dangerous. The way that I got involved with them was childhood,
right?
So it's like breathing for me. And I suspect the same is true for Morgan and Kat. I'm not speaking for them, but this is how I understand their understanding of the Fae. But it still doesn't mean we're safe from, not doing something stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And like I forgot to do some gifting and offering for like 2 weeks after I'd had COVID. And I forgot. And then I fell down in the middle of walking down the street. Nobody on the crowded sidewalk seemed to have noticed that I fell. And I fell flat on my face, no reason. Like, I didn't even feel something like grab me or brush against my feet. Just bam, flat. Yeah. Like I was walking and then boom, I was not.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I realized, when I got up and I was bloody and scratched and nobody had like looked to even like acknowledge that I was even there. I'm like, oh, what did I do? Oh. So of course, I had to go home and get the butter out and be like, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. So yeah, even if we who've had relationships with them for a long time do something dumb, they'll still smack you. And that's the thing is, you don't want to attribute every bad thing that happens to them.
Right. Yeah.
But you also don't want to ignore signs. And I think you kind of, in your logical mind, kind of ignored that, ladder between the two little land masses.
Yeah, I did.
Have you ever been there? Yeah, you did. It's okay. People, this is crazy talk here. Oh, Yeah. I mean, seriously, people are gonna, that's a thing that people just think of as crazy, but it's not.
I need to go back. I think I'll go out tomorrow and do another one of those things. And I guess say I'm grateful for the sign, even though I don't know what it means. Just give them acknowledge it and let them know that I know, or at least I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's a good start to reciprocity with them. I think that's good.
Yeah, and it's Robin's like at least the biggest way that he communicates with all this stuff is through dreams, and that is a practice that goes back a long, 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 long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have weird dreams. Like, I don't want to say like I have really weird dreams, but one, I don't always remember them the way I should, and two, they're so wild that it's impossible to discern any kind of meaning or message, except for one time, and it was interesting. I have dreams involving people, but they're very, very specific people. And it's been two that show up the most, and then one that shows up more than not. So my old co-host and mentor, Luke, the ceremonial magician of 12 years, he is in almost every dream I have that's involving magic. And Tim Renner is in all my dreams involving Bigfoot and the paranormal. So I had two dreams in one night, one with Tim and one with Luke. The one with Tim, he had me on his show to talk about because he thought it was really interesting. Basically, he and I are in what I perceive to be Gazoo's woods, even though it did not look anything like Gazoo's woods. It looked like the forest or a small cropping of trees in a golf course.
Okay.
And there are like very definable Bigfoot just inside the forest edge. And we're real close. And I'm not allowed to look at them. And he says, "You're not allowed to look at them. Don't look at them." But Tim is drawing them. And I guess he's drawing them for me. I'm not sure. But at some point I look over and I see it, and it's very mad. And then I immediately go into the next dream, which is Luke teaching me the Almadel system, which is you create a wax table and with a crystal ball, and you see angels through that. And the message of that, and he looked at me and said, "You can't skip the preparations, because they will know, and they will be very angry at you, and they will not turn out well for you." And then I woke up.
No, both of them had decent messages.
Yeah.
Useful advice, you know. Don't skimp on the preparation. Well, duh. And that's part of why ceremonialism is a pain in the tuchus, because it's a whole bunch of stuff between you and what you're doing, but that's how it works.
Yeah.
And as for not looking at the Bigfoot, again, I think that's parsing what Tim always says is don't want too hard.
I can see that.
I think it's a variant of that. Although, looking big monstery guys in the eyes might.
Well, I've always wondered if
upset them,
because I've had two dreams, that one and another one, of like a very definable Bigfoot in my dream. And I wonder how much of that, because Tim and Josh make the analogy of them possibly being in the realm of the Fae, because it's a very broad term. And I wonder if that is how I internalize it, if that is how I identify the Fae.
That could be
with Bigfoot.
The wild.
Yeah.
The wild man, the wilderness. Although, the Fae aren't all wilderness wild.
And
I mean, they're wild.
Yeah.
But they don't only exist in the wilderness. They exist where people are.
Well, yeah.
Especially the ones who interact with people for, their own purposes.
I mean, what happened the first time me and Tim went to Kazoo's together, when I told him about what happened to me by myself, and then I took him out there, and we were followed all day by
invisible. Yeah.
yeah. Don't know what that was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Gazoo's Woods is an interesting case because, of course, you can see straight through.
Yeah,
I mean, you
absolutely.
can see from one end to the other,
Mhm.
and that's a lot like the small patch of woods that was at the Falling Down the Hill House property.
Mhm.
You could see through it. It wasn't that deep, but people were getting lost in there
Yeah.
and stuff, and it was really really strange. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that even a small space like that seems to be able to hold and contain. I don't know if it's a portal to the other world or if they're just very close together.
Well, yeah, that's
in
what
places like that.
I've always felt, that when it comes to the other world, it's not necessarily a separate place. It's just a layer on top of this on this canvas that we don't have access to unless it's certain conditions, certain places, things like that. But it's not, you're not going anywhere else. You're still here. It's
Yeah.
just a different
Yeah.
layer.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And that's very like the journeying techniques that I learned is, you can move around in this reality,
Mhm.
Physical reality. You can do out of body work and move around, but you can also go into the underworld. And when you do that, in the lower world, you are basically underneath where you are.
Mhm.
Now, you can travel through that and go to other places, but it starts with underneath, and then the upper world is up above this world.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like stacked papers. I don't know, see-through paper, tissue
Yeah,
paper,
that's
so you can see all the layers. Something to that effect. Yeah, I think the short answer to your question, is there a safe way? Nah, it's never safe with them. But there are safer ways. And so what are other things that you know about with dealing with them?
you know this. Whenever I get the microphone, my brain goes blank.
Don't feel bad, mine does too.
Let's see. Don't eat or accept food from them.
Yes. Now, there are caveats here. If they are of the English, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, British, Manx, anything from those island areas, yeah, you shouldn't eat. Just decline politely, or take the cup and then don't drink it. However, if you are offered mead and bread or mead and meat by a Norse elf, you have to take it and eat it, because to not do so is to violate the law of hospitality.
Mhm.
And what they're doing when they give you bread, they are saying, I will not harm you.
Yeah.
If you refuse that, then that breaks the trust.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind. It's not an absolute. You kind of have to know. Also, there's the spirits that were native to here.
Mhm.
And so they might have different rules.
And
In
so
fact, I'm
that's-
sure they have different rules.
And that's, I think, one of the other things that I've always been curious about is knowing the difference. Because unless something comes up to me while I'm in the woods and it's like very definable, I'm not really going to know what exactly I'm interacting with unless it tells me and I have some way of verifying that information. That's the one, that's the one plus of ceremonial magic, is those spirits, you can identify them, and
you can get their name. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, are there methods of doing that with the Fae or nature spirits?
You can tell by actions,
Mm.
kind of. Never ask a fairy their name either. That's very bad, very
Okay.
bad. Especially if you're a human. If they give you their name, that's cool. Don't ever ask for it. Again, when I said that fae cannot be compelled by human magic, they are real antsy about people trying. So if you ask for their name, that's not going to go over well. They're going to assume that you're trying to take power over them. That's also why you call them the good folk or the good neighbors and all of that, so that they understand that you're not trying to say you have power over them.
Yeah, I understand that.
They're very, very keen on humans not doing that. But yeah, I don't know what the native tribes around Maryland were. I know more about, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and then northward. I don't know. And I was only in Maryland for like 2 years, so I didn't learn all of the native stuff from there. But that'd be something to look up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I know of several encounters with what the Cherokee call the Nunahi, and several with the Inuit-Sindi, I think is how it's pronounced. I'm probably massacring it. It's a very difficult language. But the Nunahi are the ones who were about human size and very beautiful with long flowing hair. And then the other ones are the little ones that are like 2.5, 3 feet tall at the most.
Okay.
And they get mad if the little ones can get very, very angry if you disturb their homes. But they also like children and will help children if they're lost. They're not going to be grabbing them and, running off. And the Nunahi are fairly well disposed towards humans. So, yeah, but they have this whole, like, the Cherokee have a whole system with those beings. There is another expensive book. I will have to put a link in the show notes to it. It's The Elves of North America, something like that, or The Elves of the New World. I cannot think of the name of it. It's $1 million. Not really, but it might as well be for normal people, It's like something like $700-800. But it is amazing because it has the names and what stories this man could gather of all of the spirits of all of the tribes. And it's kind of overwhelming. Like, it's huge.
Okay.
The amount of stuff that's in there. And of course, all of the languages are different, but he got the information and compiled it. So it does exist. You can get it in research libraries. They might let you photocopy it in the library. I don't know if you could even take it out. It's probably in the reference section. So,
yeah, I'll look into it.
Yeah, it's a really good one. And I'll get the actual title to you. And that helps because, America is a melting pot.
American Elves?
American Elves.
Encyclopedia of Little People from the lore of 380 ethnic groups of Western Hemisphere? Okay.
That one indeed.
Perfect. I'll see if it's on Amazon.
Yeah. Okay, have fun with that. You're more likely to find it on Bookfinder. Yeah. You know about Bookfinder, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Everybody should know about that.
Yeah.
So how do you protect yourself from the Fae?
Sharp iron.
Okay. Cold iron, yeah.
Man-made iron,
right.
Iron.
Yeah, steel works in a pinch. I actually have a knife made out of iron railroad spike
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
that was made specifically for me for that purpose. And then if I am working with the Fae, instead of carrying that thing around, I have a knife that's made of obsidian.
Okay. Yeah.
The blade's obsidian with a deer antler handle. And that way you're not going to, put anybody on notice or freak them out,
Right. Yeah.
Salt.
Mm-hmm.
Salt works.
Is wearing your clothes inside out?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Works. I have personal stories from Morgan Daimler, from my daughter Morgana, from my friend Dan. I've done it myself. A couple of other friends. So yeah, it does work. Why does it work? I don't know.
Okay, so
I really don't.
Okay.
Maybe it's the action of reversing something on your person
Mm-hmm.
that perhaps is protective. Another thing that fairies are very into generally is neatness, tidiness, everything in its place. They're kind of really strong on having a nice house, very cozy and tidy. That's when you have your house spirits. That's what they like. And, only goblins live in my house because it's dusty.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Protections. Oh, and if you end up inviting them into your house, which I would never suggest.
Yeah, I wouldn't
honestly.
do that.
Now, they might just decide that they're going to come in anyway. And if that's the case, you can do what you can to, kind of make some boundaries with them and be like, no, shoo, get out. They really, really, really value honesty and integrity and truth telling, even though they aren't always perfectly truthful.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, they're the annoying rules lawyers of the world. They're like that D&D guy that nobody likes to play with. Nobody likes him. Don't be him. And I would say, I really, really think that the music will help.
Yeah, that's very easy. I can definitely do that.
Yeah, I think that more than anything is going to move you forward. Also, I know that you have doubts, but just message me or something. You don't have to sit there and worry and fuss over, is this a sign? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Am I nutty?
Jason
am I
Miller,
crazy?
the one thing I really like about his work is that he does this in a couple of his books where he says, in the moment, just believe it. Just have blind faith that what you're experiencing is something other. And then when you get home or when you're done, then you can analyze it and have a system of analyzing it. But while it's happening, just let it happen and believe it. Not forever, just while it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's so that's basically what I've been doing, and it feels good, and it I feel like it helps. I told this on Where the Road Go, and I think on Strange Familiars, I'm not sure. Basically, one night, my co-host Ian and I took him to where I do my offering. So I have two separate places. When I do my offerings for Hecate, separate woods, completely separate from what I do with everything else. Those are in a different one. So I took him to where I do my offerings for Hecate, and it was not the Dipnot. It was not the new moon. I just showed it to him, and he decided to do the LBRP. And it was just a very standard, him doing it. We're walking back to the car. There's not much wind. Really not at all. This was probably in September. All of a sudden, these very, very tall trees start going nuts, just rocking back and forth, almost like they're going to fall on us.
Oh, wow.
And then then it starts doing it with one single tree. And he's getting real worried. And I'm like, oh, cool. Because as soon as we move past it, it stops moving. And then one ahead of us starts.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool. I can't explain that. I cannot explain that whatsoever.
Yeah.
And even he
That's
was like weirded out. And I'm like, well, you did the LBRP. He's like, yeah, but it's not supposed to happen that way. That's not what the LBRP is for.
you might want to say what that is.
So the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, is an old Golden Dawn ritual. And I actually don't know what its purpose is. I mean, I'm assuming it's just a very basic grounding ritual and it's a banishing ritual.
You can use it to say goodbye to the elements. If you call quarters, call directions, call elements. So you can use it to open a circle after it's been cast, after the ritual is done. And you can use it to banish other things. But if you don't use it towards a purpose, it just kind of goes out. It's like the bat signal, you know, if you don't have a purpose. I think what he did was he just lit a flare and went, hey, we're over here. It worked though.
It did. And that's,
you know, if there was anything negative in those woods, it may have gotten rid of it, and then the trees were happy about it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't know.
See, we took that as something was not happy that we were there.
It was leading you.
Okay.
It knew you were going home anyway. It was ahead of you the whole time.
That's actually a good point.
If it was not happy with you, it would be behind you, messing with you and overtaking you, and it would have been much scarier.
That is a good point. We didn't think of that. Thank you. That's a very good perspective.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It just very clearly came to me that that's what it was. And yeah, when trees start moving on their own, that is a thing to pay attention to always.
And so,
any owls hooting?
Oh yeah, not that night, but that's a pretty standard thing when I go out anyway.
Okay, so they talk to you too. Mm-hmm. That's good. You know, maybe you should write all this stuff down.
Yeah.
While you're still like not thinking logically about it, like try to extend that not thinking logically about it a little bit extra. You know, just try and get it all out on paper, and then you can look at it later.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, and this, I'm gonna repeat what Tim says all the time. That wanting, that built up energy, that desire, sometimes can blind you, and what you end up looking for is this big, gigantic thing.
Yeah.
To happen, like you know, I don't know. A show of lightning or something, you know, you want something, and you'll miss the little things.
I've tempered it down
coming.
I've tempered it down quite a bit to the point where I can start to pick up things. So for example, the last two, well, not the last two, but recently I had two invocation, offering rituals that I did for Hecate, and dogs in the neighborhood barked twice, like
see
both times.
Yeah. And that happens with me too. So you're right on it.
It's not all the time.
No, not every time, but still it happens.
Yeah. Trying to think what else has gone on recently. That's been the most recent thing. But it's weird how my mind works, because when Ian and I were in the woods in November at Kazoo's, and we were in the cemetery, and we had things, very clearly walking around us in the perimeter. They wouldn't go in the cemetery, but they would go around the edge of it. My mind had no problem saying, oh, okay, Bigfoot, spectral Bigfoot. You know what I mean? But in other times, I would have just kind of brushed it off as a natural, like as something else.
Yeah.
But I think because Bigfoot is so familiar to me, and I've experienced so many signs that are attributed to that specific entity, then it's easier for me
Mhm.
to connect it.
Right. But I mean, who are we to say that Bigfoot's
Oh,
not
I
a
know.
troll?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
He's a shaggy guy, you know.
Mhm.
He lives out in the woods. He sometimes lives in a cave or under rocks or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
the thing
he's
is that because I didn't have, I wasn't into this as a child and I'm doing it now. And because of the internet, I constantly see these people talking like, oh, yeah, this talked to me. This said that. This said this. And it's like, now either they're all dirty liars or I'm just really bad at this or there's something,
okay. Again, what you're reading is unverified personal
I know.
gnosis.
I know.
And that comes to people in different ways. And I'd say probably 98% of the time, people who are talking about that on the internet aren't lying. I mean, I think they actually believe
Yeah, I do
what
too.
they are saying. And they did experience something. I am never, ever going to tell somebody they did not experience something because I am not going to invalidate somebody. That's
Oh,
just
yeah, of course.
no. But there are times when you'll get that feeling, but don't compare your path to other people's.
Yeah.
Yours is different. Yours is different from mine. Mine is different from Tim's, and Tim's is different from Chad's. And everybody has a different way of interacting. And I think you're well on your way to interacting with something. Certainly some nature spirit activity, possibly fae spirit activity, but you have to let go.
I know.
You gotta stop being uptight. you gotta let go.
Then that's the thing is because
you gotta enjoy yourself.
yeah. And I do enjoy myself when I'm doing it. I think because of my secular Jutheist.
I know what you mean. My husband was raised the same way.
The concept I think the concept of faith is very difficult for me. It's very hard for me. Because I associate it with monotheism and like a very dogmatic,
generally Protestant.
Yeah.
I know. I agree. Yeah, Zach's a lot the same way. There's not great history between Jewish folk and some overly zealot Christian people. So that's kind of hard for people who are raised that way. It's very difficult. And it's almost like you're allergic to that. It's like, I can't even.
But it's weird because like when it comes to magic, I can absolutely not pretend, but like put myself in that very Christian system of ceremonial magic because I know what the outcome is. I know what the result should be. And that makes everything okay.
Yeah. Well, also some of that is based on Kabbalah, so it actually came from your peeps
in there.
Yeah,
as
it came from your peeps first.
It may be, it's still there.
Yeah. As Lewis Black would say, that's your stuff. Not their stuff. They get it and mess it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. The Fae really like to party. They really like things like music and drinking and dancing and having fun. So I think if you can loosen up and just make a practice of going out and playing music and, I don't know, take a flask with you.
Yeah.
Make sure you can get home.
Yeah,
I mean,
course.
if you have to drive home, don't be ridiculous, but just ease up and have a good time. And loosen those those. You're kind of bound up in there. The energy I'm getting here is you're just kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's because reading all these grimoires, it's very serious. It's very,
Oh my God.
and
Yes. It is, isn't it?
And I've somewhat I guess I've internalized that a little bit when it comes to magic. And so now whenever I go out, I feel the need, because in my mind, I'm taking that as respect. That if I'm goofy and fun, it's going to come off as disrespectful.
It depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
And where you are, and how you're. I mean, if you're going to call up an angel, you bloody well can't be like
exactly
boogieing down. My God, that's just terrible. And the goetic spirits, they also are very proud and must respect us.
Right. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance with both of those spirits.
Not so much the Fae. I mean, they want to be respected, but they're not so much the pomp and circumstance sorts.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've figuring out.
They love play.
It's funny because if anyone's read Robert Artisan, he has a very not dark, but a very serious tone in his book. You know what I mean?
It's very serious.
Yeah, and it's very existential. So I always find that very interesting. I think that's maybe why I like his writing so much, is the way.
Yeah, you're kind of going from one kind of. So you need to hang out with the hedge witches a little bit.
Yeah, probably.
And just chill out and have fun.
Yeah, I would
seriously.
Like to, yeah.
Seriously, if you go to pagan events and stuff, and that helps. That helps a lot, because a lot of it is celebratory, and you can just sit and exist around with people who are doing all the same things, drumming, dancing, singing, playing music, all of that stuff. It really, it's been, I don't know, probably almost 20 years since I've been to a pagan festival, but I do remember them quite well. And it really helps.
Yeah.
It helps loosen you up in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to go. And I've been wanting to get into that community for a long time. Being a part of the community and having more people to talk to about it is something that I have been very much craving.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, you're like every other community. There are those people, and you'll meet them, and just let it roll off your back. Just keep walking, but you'll also meet some really amazing people.
Yeah.
And yes, some of them are going to be super, super serious, but even the super serious ones do loosen up generally.
Are you familiar with Irene Glass?
With who?
Irene Glass. She's an author in Maryland, and she lives in Maryland. She's part of the...
That is a familiar name. Irene Glass. Where have I heard her name?
She just put out, I think she just put out a book. Maybe a little bit older than I'm thinking, but she's in Maryland. She's in, I can't remember where exactly. But I contacted her because she goes to a lot of the Frederick events, which is where most of the pagan stuff is held. And my idea was like, all right, well, I'll connect with her, and then she can kind of act as an intermediary and connect me with other people around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There used to be a pagan shop in Laurel.
Oh, there still is. The Crystal Fox?
Oh, they're still there?
Yeah, I'm there all the time.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's where we always went.
Yeah, they're a great place. They have Strange Dominions business cards on their front desk.
Excellent. Yeah, she wrote Black Feather Mystery School, the Magpie Training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. Yeah, it is possible that I knew her from the pagan scene back in the early 2000s, because that's when we were in Maryland.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We were there from like 1999 to 2002.
Okay.
So yeah. I'm glad to hear that the Crystal Fox is still around.
Oh, yeah.
They're really a nice community group, and yeah,
Yeah, they really are. Valuable
yeah.
resource for
good friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, do you have any other questions? I mean, we're here.
I guess, what is your take on the relationship, or the yeah, I guess we'll just say the relationship between the Fae and the dead, and the idea that they are one and the same?
I don't. Well, see, I have been even before I encountered Josh Cutchin's Ecology of Souls. I had the idea that the otherworldly creatures and beings that we met and, were involved with might be some sort of version of humanity that just was disembodied. And that some of them were not just one human's worth of gnosis, I guess, or essence or soul, but were conglomerations of many souls, and that you got, that's how you got your demigods or your fae or your angels or whatever. And it was different combinations. I don't think that's a bad idea. I do think, though, that I can see it both ways, and that's a very difficult position to be in, to see both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
And be like, on the one side, on the one side, fairies are different from nature spirits, are different from angels, are different from demons, are different from dead people. End of story. Boom. There we go. But I don't think it's that simple. I think that when you have fairies living in burial mounds and people seeing, along with the fairies dancing past on, Beltane night, their recent dead, well, how do you know? How do you know? Maybe that's one of the places dead people can go, though.
Yeah.
Not everybody goes to the fairies, but
I feel like
some of them choose to go the middle way rather than up or down.
That'd probably be my path. But I feel like just saying the Fae are the dead, it's too simple and it's almost inaccurate, in the sense that I feel like if the Fae are the dead, then when you die, you transmutate into this entirely new being. And there's no real trace.
Which you might.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. But once that happens,
we don't
there's
know.
no trace. There's no connection. You're a dead human, and then you're a Fae. And so, because I think when people say, oh, they're the same thing, just because we're the origin of if that's the true hypothesis, right? If we're the
as the origin of the
origin, then something else completely different comes out of it. It's not, if I'm making sense.
I think it's an anthropocentric viewpoint that the Fae are human dead.
Yes, I agree.
It puts us in the center, and I don't think we're the center. No. I think that we are. I mean, I'm an animist.
Same, yeah.
Everything has spirits. Even, some technological stuff has spirits, because I talk to it all the time, begging it, please do not screw up, because I tend to screw it up.
If you can use the headens right to fix your car, which apparently people have done, there's a lot of things that we don't think that has spirit that does.
Oh yeah, I mean, the name of my stove is Calcifer.
Oh, nice.
And if he gets cranky, I have to talk with him. And come on. So yeah, I think it's too anthropocentric to
I
say
agree.
the dead are fairies and fairies are the dead, and that's boom, 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 boom. Because there are so many different spirits, and to put ourselves in the center of that, just see, that might be why fairies don't always like us, because we say dumb things like that that sound like us putting ourselves in their place, and they wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't like it if I were them either. I'm a human, and I don't like us putting us in everything.
I know, right? I mean, we're screwing up everybody's ecosystem right now. Might as well screw up the spiritual ecosystem too.
Yeah.
Great humans going and conquering everything. That's wonderful. That's sarcasm, y'all, if you can't hear it in my voice. Yeah, I'm not the fairies are the dead, no, it's all too complicated to ever answer.
Yeah, it really is.
Correctly. But I do think that fairies are a distinct group, and the spirits in the Americas are going to be similar but different. But I also wonder if when the Germans and the Swedes and the Irish and the English came across and brought their spirits with them, if there wasn't some like blending, because it happened with the people.
Yeah, and I think that was absolutely the case, especially here on the East Coast with the 13 colonies. I absolutely think that there is a blending of incorporealness.
Yeah, I can't help but think that the I've always thought that the fact that America is a melting pot, if you look at the genetic components of lots of us in America, we're just all kinds of mixed up, genetically speaking. And I think that's a great strength.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it should make us like more tolerant and less apt to hate people, because we are the illustration perfectly of we are everybody else and everybody else is us, and we are all connected.
Yeah.
You would think, but I don't run the world, so it doesn't work that way. Yeah. I would like to think that the spirits, did they like carve out their own little colonial areas, or did they trade amongst the spirit people? What happened?
I don't know. And it makes me wonder about like the plants that weren't native here that were brought here, and the spirits of those plants.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Dandelion.
I've see
yarrow.
I've contemplated going. I cannot remember her name, but there was a couple witch trials in Maryland, but there was like one very notable one, and I can't remember what her name was or where she was. But I've contemplated going either to where like there's a rock that's associated with her that's now a monument, or her grave if it is one, and just sitting there and seeing like what I can gain from that, if in fact she was a witch and was just not a poor woman with that thrusted on her.
Yeah, it's probably what she was.
Yeah.
Was or a midwife, or or the local herbalist or whatever. Puritans.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't Puritans. If it was Maryland, that was more of a northern thing.
Yeah, we had actually a very thick Catholic carved out.
Yeah. Maryland is one of the more Catholic centered places. And then there's Rhode Island, which was started by the Freethinker.
Yeah.
the free love guy, the hippie who came across one guy,
Yeah, and then,
started it all.
Then you have Kelpius in Philly. Kelpius
Yeah.
Cave. That's a cool place.
It's a if you think about the whole immigration of humans along with immigrations of spirits, that just opens up a whole mess of questions
Plus,
and thoughts.
and it's known,
You know,
it's known that a manuscript of the Lesser Key was on either the Mayflower or one of those. So you have to wonder.
Oh yeah.
You know,
who was doing what with what, where, how,
and what wasn't banished properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, truly. You know, and of course I am of the opinion that our non-deist but Freemason related founding fathers were doing all kinds of ritualist stuff when they built the whole idea of our country. So I really think there's just so much buried in it, you know, that could be looked at and dealt with. Be an interesting thing to write about.
Oh yeah, that would be a very good book.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you have?
No, I think that was it. Thank you so much.
I think it was a good conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
You are very welcome. And like I said, you know how to get in touch with me. Like, you know, if you ever like have your logical mind being like all evil and obnoxious, you can contact me and I'll talk you down.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I definitely need it from time to time.
I understand. I'm actually a very logical person who, you know, when I'm in the middle of having something weird happen, my brain is ticking away going, well, is that a plane? No, planes don't go diagonally sideways, you know? Oh, and they don't come down to treetop level either. Oops. Yeah. So, yeah, even to this day, I still sit there and go through every logical thing I can think of. I'm still not great at just experiencing it. Half of my brain is, you know, Spock in the background is doing an analysis. You know, right
running
there.
all the data from every which way to make sense of it.
Yep.
In a paradigm that I don't even agree with.
I know, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for asking questions.
Thank you for having me.
It's a very important question. So thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
And good night.
You too.
Well, that's all for this week's episode of the 6 Degrees of John Keel podcast. If you have any questions or thoughts about the podcast or would like to come and talk about your experiences of the paranormal, you can contact us at 6djk67@gmail.com. We promise to even answer you, and we are always happy to hear from you. Thank you.